This $25,000 down payment assistance from Kamala is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That doesn't help homeowner affordability. The election, I think that has an impact of people sitting on the fence because they just, in the back of their mind, they want to know what's going on. But the reality is whether Trump wins or Harris wins, I don't see a massive impact on housing. Where I see policy impact on housing, like this $25,000 down payment assistance from Kamala is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That doesn't help homeowner affordability.
Yeah.
That is the opposite effect. If I incentivize buyers, that means you're trying to incentivize reducing inventories, which means you're incentivizing appreciation, which makes things more expensive.
Sure.
And $25,000 down payment ain't the problem. The problem is interest rates. Let's not worsen the problem. But we need to figure out, especially from institutional buyers to just coming up with programs to bring on more homeownership opportunity and more affordable homeownership opportunity. Let's entice sellers.
Yeah.
If you sell your home to a primary occupant,
First-time home buyer, primary occupant.
either or. If you sell it to a primary occupant and not an investor, and if you sell it to a first-time home buyer, there's these little stipends against your capital gains. That will incentivize sellers to want to sell to minimize their tax outlay on whatever the capital gains are on their home. And if we have some buy-side incentives that go in accordance with that first-time home buyer grants, I'm all for stuff like that. But just throwing a number out there so aimlessly, like, we're going to give you $25,000 if you go buy a house.
Yeah.
It's so, to use the word dangerous is probably aggressive. It's just careless because no one's done the math on that. And that's just, it doesn't help housing.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I think housing will play as the Fed goes and as inventories go, as debt goes, more than what a grant program does. But I do think we're in for a better 2025. And so agents need to prepare the right way that there's going to be increased competition as well.
What can agents do to acquire that information?
Homework, just go online, do your research and see. Like, most typical homes are pretty easy to comp. All you need to look at is the area of activity. How many current listings are available? How many recent sales have there been? Start with 3 months. In 3 months, how many sales have there been versus current active inventory? That'll give you a pace. Like when I was in new construction at Pulte, we always looked at pace of a community. We looked at the competition. So we would look at Horton, KB Homes, and Toll and see what their pacing was versus what our projected pacing is. So we could come up with what we think that over the next 6-month period, how many homes we think we're going to sell on target. But we didn't look at what happened 6 months ago. We looked at what's going on in the competition, what's coming up. Is there a new development coming up that we need to be aware of? Or are we one of the only games in town? It's the same thing when you talk about resale. The environment of active versus sold and pendings is going to tell you a lot. And sometimes you'll say, even though the market might not be going up, we are one of very few available. But if you're one of very few available in a very slow-paced area, like rural areas or areas that aren't as desirable or areas that have uniqueness about the property, maybe the average home has an acre or two.
Sure.
Maybe the average home has a hodgepodge of when they've been built. It's dicey. Well, those areas typically have less activity. You need to look at that rather than having, like, take a typical community in Gilbert that was built in 2008, 300 homes, a lot of subdivision communities out there. It's much easier to get a pace value in those communities because you're going to see what the traction is today versus what it was 6 months ago. And then you look at the active inventory and you measure against that to say, I think that this area is going to go up in value, or it might stay flat, or it could go down.
Sure.
Pacing's important.
You still recommend that agents really hone in whatever that target area is. Once you're in that area and you know the communities, you know the builds, you then are able to have a real read on what is happening there.
Well, that makes you the expert. The old notion of farming an area still holds true. Go to where you best fit in with the demographic of a community. You need to have icebreakers. You need to be able to have discussions and conversations with people can relate to. You need to go and plant your flag where you best fit in. And then from there, you exploit that. You're there in that area every weekend on your open houses or during the week. Your flyers, postcards, just solds, just listed, newsletters, social posts, all the stuff you do is community-based. Because all of a sudden, and it happens really quick. You know my story about how quick it happened because I stayed focused on Scottsdale Ranch, that one community, and then I went into PV. But it can happen quick because people don't have consistency. And those agents that remain consistent in their marketing, it's amazing how quickly you can become that guy or girl.
For someone who's watching this video, new agent, what advice would you recommend for them to hit that first level of success?
Well, one, it takes time, and don't measure yourself against others. Measure yourself against yourself. It doesn't matter if you're new in the business or if you've been in it a while. On the first of every month, we start with 0 because the mentality can't be, well, I sold 8 houses in August, so I got 6 closings in September and I got 2 that will roll into October because it's a 6-day close of escrow, so I'm good, because that dries up. We need to be selling every month. The pipeline on the front end is what dictates the pipeline on the back end. To me, I never measured it on how many closings I had for the month. I measured it on how many sales I got for the month. And so it's the motivation to, like, wake up hungry every day that I need to sell a home. I need to sell.